A brief guide for navigating too much to eat.
Some days life can be challenging.
Choose to match you in a hurry.
Sometimes you must declare it's all too much to eat.
Too much to process, too much to see,
too much to handle, too much cat pee.
I don't even own a cat.
When you look at life and too muchery abounds,
pause. Listen to your breath and the way that sounds.
Reach out to people, all the friends you can think of,
because
absurd times calls for absurd amounts of love. So remember, dear friend,
there's no need to worry.
Together we are more than enough
for all the too muchery.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for, or it's good afternoon, 12 o'clock, so much for joining us for today's session. We debated if we should call it the too muchery session, because that's pretty much where we're all sitting. For those of you that I haven't met before, my name is Tracy Freeman. I look after investor relations and marketing from a South African perspective with BPESA. BPESA is the National Trade Body and Industry Association looking after global business services, and the BPO sector. And with the reason that we're hosting the session today was really a call out from you as our members and our stakeholders that literally there's just a little bit too muchery happening at the moment. And how do we deal with this? How do we actually support ourselves, our staff, etc.? So from a BPESA perspective, it's unfortunate that we've had the incidences that we have over and above COVID recently. And that's put us in a situation where we've had to kind of sort of reassess and reevaluate where we are as an international offshore destination. And our brag point for the year, which we use every opportunity to remind everyone, is that we did win the top offshore 2021 global CX destination. And we really wanted to see, well, how can we retain that title next year? But in order to do so, we need to work with you as our industry and with your staff and our most important asset, which is our people, to ensure that we can continue servicing our local and our international customers from the best possible start point. So really that's what we're looking at today is how can we support you? How can we help you to support your teams? And we have a phenomenal lineup of speakers. But what I'm going to do is actually pass over to my colleague, Shona Pariashi, and she will be taking us through today's session. But thank you very much for joining us today. It's good to have you on board. Over to you, Shona.
Thank you, Tracy, and a very good afternoon to everybody attending the session today. I trust that you're all doing really well under the circumstances, and I feel like under the circumstances is something that we add on to every response that we give to people when we say how we're doing. And these circumstances are the circumstances that led us as BPESA to focus in on a very important element concerning the most important part of our sector, and that is our people. Dr. Kagiso Maronganya said during the second wave that we are all directly and indirectly affected by the virus, with daily fears of losing loved ones and or contracting a life-threatening disease. And the social impact this pandemic is having just raises the awareness and the sensitivity to everybody around us. If I'm not mistaken, it's about 16 months to the day when things in South Africa changed drastically overnight with very little warning. Yeah, the writing was on the wall and we anticipated some of it, but we were by no means prepared for what that meant for us, for our businesses, our jobs, our families. And what started off as a 21-day lockdown has turned into 16 months of up and down, going out and staying in, working from the office, working from home, being teachers, parents, managers, doctors, and sometimes all of that at the same time while trying to juggle the mute and unmute buttons and having bad hair days. For some, the last 16 months has meant starting new jobs, tackling new challenges, and finding new ways of managing a workforce that we can't touch, that we can't necessarily smile at, high five, greet in person, or even hug. And while as a sector, we've managed to really thrive under the circumstances, I'm not 100% sure how we've done as human beings. We've endured changes. We've endured many forms of loss. We've endured successes. We've had some really great excitement. We've had some big disappointments. We've had big wins. We've had small wins. And we've endured and gone through so many different emotions at this particular point in time. So I really hope that the panelist lineup that we have for you brings you some sort of sanity in this crazy world that we woke up in 16 months ago. But before we go on, you are also people in the sector. As much as you are leaders, team leaders, managers, HR managers, directors, business owners, you're people to begin with. And before we go on, I just want to have a check-in with us and see how are you doing? Let's do a quick check-in and see how are you feeling currently. Are you feeling overwhelmed and emotional? Are you feeling excited, optimistic, happy? Are you feeling meh, numb, not sure what you're feeling? Or are you feeling worried, fearful, and sad? So maybe just tell us a little bit about what's going on in your mind and where you're at this particular point in time. We've just come through quite a substantial amount of unrest as a country. In every single province, there was some form of unrest that we've had to go through. And I don't know what that's left you feeling like. Some of you may be sitting in a position where you're not 100% sure what's happening at your organization. You're not sure what the next couple of months are going to look like for you. You're struggling to keep up with the workload because people have gotten sick around you. So these are just some of the grouped emotions that we've put together just to have a check-in with our community and see how our community is doing. One of the other questions that we've got is how you're feeling about the future. So some of us are struggling just to get through today. Some of us haven't thought that far. We really just want to get through to Friday. Some of us may be feeling excited, optimistic, happy, or worried, fearful, and sad. So if you haven't had a chance, just pop your answer into the poll and let us know how you're feeling, because that's important. It's important to acknowledge what you're feeling in order to overcome it and to change the narrative, as we'll hear one of our professionals and specialists talk later on. I think, Trace, if we've got all our answers in, let's share the poll with the guys. And interestingly, how you're feeling currently, a lot of people are feeling on the call overwhelmed and emotional, and that's okay. It's why we're here. It's to unpack what those feelings are about, and also hopefully give you some practical ideas around how to overcome those emotions and how to deal with them in a way that's supportive, in a way that helps you grow as a human being. I'm also glad to see that there are some people who are excited and optimistic. And yeah, like some of us, we have some meh, numb people. We actually need to numb ourselves down in order to move forward and to be productive. And we have some people who are worried, fearful, and sad, and rightfully so. What's interesting is that a lot of people are not struggling to get through today. We have a lot of people who are really productive in the sense of emotional wellness or mental wellness, because when you have an issue, you sometimes struggle to deal with today. You can't even think further than the next hour. But what we need to focus on is that we have some people on the call who are worried, fearful, and sad about our future. And it's important that we as individuals grab hold of the reins of our lives and really move forward with how is it that we're going to overcome this fearful, worried, and sad feelings about our future, and what can we control to change that. So it definitely is a mixed bag of emotions. And I suppose that's why we have a need for discussions like this, to ensure that we take care of our own mental health and the well-being of the people who look to us as leaders for guidance. We are aware that not every leader and manager is equipped to identify or assist employees in dealing with these situations. And the recent unrest has added a new layer of complexity on our plates. As South Africans, we're born with a certain amount of resilience, I'd like to think. And just because we can get through just about any situation doesn't mean we need to do it alone. So In today's session, we're hoping to at least provide you with some insights into some of the emotions you, your family, your employees have been going through, and to leave you with some practical ways in which to apply the learnings to your life and to help guide your employees through the same. So let me take some time now to introduce you to our expert panelists who will be answering some pertinent questions around wellness and diversity. But before I do, for those of you who don't know, I am Shona and I look after the Gauteng region for Bapesa. I'm joined today on the call, assisting us in the background and also who will come to the fore when we start doing some Q&A, by Samkelo Blom, who is in the Western Cape and also looks after our HR from an EXCO perspective, and Sam Hussein, who really makes sure that everything in the background at Bapesa runs smoothly. And then you've met Tracy earlier on in the call, who is the brainchild behind getting this out in a manner that was so timely and so needed right now based on the answers that you've all given us. Now on to our panelists. I will introduce each of them with a brief intro, but I will then allow themselves to come on camera and to tell you a little bit about who they are before we jump into the questions. So first up, we have Letabo Sekele. Letabo is the founder and chief executive officer of WorkWell. It's a workplace mental health organization, a company which is committed to fighting mental health and the stigma attached to it in the workplace. She also assists organizations to adequately respond to and address employee mental health needs and challenges. She holds a BA honors from Rhodes University and holds a certificate in global health delivery and governance from Harvard University's Harvard X. Letabo was recently honored by the Mail and Guardian on their list of top 200 young South Africans for 2021 in the healthcare category in recognition of the work that she's doing through WorkWell. But Letabo, you tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Thank you so much. Let me just get my video on. Thank you, Shona, and thank you everybody for joining the webinar today. As Shona mentioned, I am the Chief Executive Officer of WorkWell. The work really primarily stems from my own experience with mental health, having been a young professional, navigating the world of work while also dealing with a mental health condition is really what has sparked my interest in this line of work. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to engaging with everybody, and hopefully you'll find my input insightful and have some practical takeaways for your respective organizations.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Letabo. Next up, we have Candace Lambert. Candace has a background in psychology and financial management. She's been exposed to a variety of elements that surround people development and empowerment, ranging from school kids with intellectual disabilities to HR professionals battling with best practices around people management. So she comes with an absolute wealth of experience. One of the quotes that she has is that managing change has become a passion of hers. So I said to her that the last 16 months must have been heaven for you, because all we've had is change. Candace, over to you. Tell us a little bit more about who you are and what makes you you.
Cool. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much, Shona. So I'm the director at Kids Dialogue. We specialize in telemedicine and obviously face-to-face mental health counseling, but our key focus area is basically raising resilient leaders, resilient and compassionate leaders in the future. So it's basically empowering parents how to raise kids better, especially during tumultuous times that we are in. And yeah, just to support parents and be there for them. We've got educational psychologists and psychiatrists, psychometrists on our platform, and our network is quite wide. We are a global network, so we really do want to make sure that we are tapping into various nuances, especially from a cultural perspective as well.
That's really awesome, Candace. Thank you so much. And we are really honored to have you on board. Somebody else who we're really honored to have on board is Dr. Mariette Myberg. Mariette is the founder and director of All Transform Consulting Services. She offers NLP for business. She does executive and life coaching. She also acts as a mediator, seasoned facilitator, trainer, lecturer, negotiator, and one of my favorite is next level strategy advisor. She provides an array of services aimed at true transformation, empowerment, and real change on an organizational, group, individual, and community level. Mariette, please tell us more.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for the opportunity. It's certainly a pleasure to be on the call. Yes, various services quite exposed in the past few months to just the impact of change and how it makes us particularly vulnerable, because it's really become a VUCA world. And I'll explain a little bit about that later on, but looking forward to share some of the experiences, certainly, and also some of the studies and how everything came about in terms of where I am today, my viewpoints. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mariette. And our fourth panelist comes to us from KZN and talk about resilience. I mean, just 2 weeks ago, she's been dealing with what's happening in KZN, and today she's telling us how to get through it. So I'd like to welcome Roshni Ramia. After 27 years in the corporate world, Roshni identified people personal development and employee well-being as key areas that needed focus in order for individuals to transform their lives and to empower themselves to flip their script. I can't wait for her to tell us more about that. She left the corporate world to start Creative Wellness Concepts to provide solutions for sustainable change in mindset and behavior tools and processes designed to help other people. I think it's amazing. The tools are designed to help you change, to help you grow, thrive in all circumstances. So welcome, Roshni. Tell us a little bit more about you.
Hello, everyone. My vision is to leave people who are willing to change better than I found them. So I discovered my ikigai, which is a Japanese concept for your reason for being, through my passion for people development. And this focus spans more than 20 years in the corporate world, community projects, and from my personal journey. I provide solutions for personal transformation and development using neuro-linguistic programming, transformational life coaching, and laughter therapy. I further facilitate employee well-being interventions and team bonding initiatives. My experience as a performance coach, leadership coach, and as the head of the transformation and diversity platform in corporate has contributed to what I do today. I'm also a suicide prevention counselor and a HIV and AIDS counselor. My trademark program, Empower Yourself to Flip Your Script, has produced amazing outcomes, resulting in an endorsement from a recognized skills academy and heartwarming testimonials within the GBS industry. I have worked with youth and agents of all backgrounds, and also especially with youth with disabilities. And it has been a completely heartwarming experience. As a member of BPESA, I am familiar with the challenges in this environment. I look forward to sharing with you today. Thank you.
Really awesome. Thank you so much, Roshni. It's great to see the impact that you've had in our sector. And I'm looking forward to hearing more about how to flip our script. Last and certainly not least, we have Henriette. Henriette joins us from Lifeline South Africa. They offer a 24-hour telephonic service that assists South Africans in dealing with the psychological, social stresses, and trauma that they're struggling to deal with. Lifeline SA also has programs related to National Trauma and Crisis Line, the National Stop Gender Violence Helpline, the National HIV and AIDS Helpline, and the Nerve Center National Health Services. I think the real hero here are the people together with Henriette at Lifeline who between January and July have fielded over 190,000 calls through the Lifeline channels. And I'd really love for Henriette to introduce herself to us and tell us a little bit more about what she does.
Thank you very much for having me, Shana. Good afternoon, colleagues. My name is Henriette Coupe. I'm a social work supervisor here at Lifeline South Africa. I have been 12 years in the profession and have gained a substantial knowledge of different levels of intervention in our communities. Here as Lifeline, we have been in existence for more than 50 years as an organization, and we are doing a lot of work to individuals, groups, and communities. Our vision is to inculcate improved emotional wellness through healing trauma, crisis intervention, and counseling. So our work is majorly telephonically with a team of lay counselors, professional nurses, and professional social workers. However, over and above, we do a lot of work on the ground where we facilitate community dialogues and challenge people's mentalities, where we do a lot of workshops, where we even do training on various social ills that are affecting our communities, issues of HIV and AIDS, issues of gender-based violence, and issues of COVID-19 to assess how they are dealing with this pandemic, and to also make sure that we equip them with necessary coping strategies so that at the end of the day, we achieve our vision of inculcating improved emotional wellness in everyone throughout South Africa. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Henriette. And thank you to each one of our panelists for making yourselves available. It really means a lot to us and to the sector. So I want to jump straight into the meat of things. And as I mentioned earlier, it's been about 16 months of up and down, lockdown stress, unemployment, COVID infections, death, fear of death, survival, victories, civil unrest, fear of not being able to feed our families, keeping our businesses operational. And while there has been some amazing moments of absolute bliss, I know that for some, if not all of us on the call, we have been brought down by some form of survivor's guilt, depression, loss, anxiety, and all of those emotions that took us on a roller coaster this last 16 months. And my first question is for Roshni. Roshni, I love the whole flip the script. So we have to flip the script in order to remain productive, to change our narrative daily so that we can be functional and focused on our jobs and our families and what we need to get through. And I know that's easier said than done. So maybe you can guide us in terms of what we can do as leaders to do just that, to flip the script for ourselves, for our people, and our people look to us for guidance. So how do we help them to do that?
Thank you, Shona. We can move on to the slide where I ask the question, where are you today? We have just come out of a poll, and that has revealed where this audience stands. So why is it important to check in with yourself? So checking in with yourself and assessing your needs helps you to pour into yourself so that you can pour into others. We often check on those around us, but neglect ourselves. Sounds familiar, hey? Checking in is beneficial because it can improve your mood, your energy, your relationship with others, and your productivity. So when we experience trauma, we follow stages of recovery thereafter. And I found this very helpful for me to check into myself, to understand what stage am I in and how do I move forward. These stages are based on the work of Dr. Judith Herman and shared recently by psychologist Rocky Bikram. So I want you to check in on yourself right now as I take you through these stages of recovery. Are you in the safety and stability stage? Regaining a sense of safety in your environment, expressing your fears, feelings, and getting back with routines that create stability, things that you're familiar with? Or are you in a remembering and grieving stage? You are conscious of what trauma you have experienced and are mourning losses that may come in many forms. Or are you in a reconnection and integration stage? So you are at the space where you start to integrate more positive experiences and you don't let the trauma define you. So everyone will experience these stages differently. And it's important for you to understand where you are and to be able to recognize this in others. You will understand the healing that needs to take place and aspects of self-care that needs to be attended to. You can't pour coffee from an empty cup. So my favorite way to flip my script daily is to start with positive self-talk, especially using positive affirmations. For those of you who know me, you would know that I have created affirmations and I've been sharing this for 489 days of lockdown. That was the way I dealt and am dealing with lockdown. So create an easy affirmation to start your day. By using these affirmations, you instruct your brain to carry a positive message to the rest of your body, and it reacts accordingly. Your affirmations can be simple, like I am safe, all is well in the day, or like the affirmation I say that I created for myself is a little bit more complicated, and it goes like this. I accept good graciously into my life. All of my needs are met abundantly for now and for always. That sets the tone for my day, and I am able to greet the day in a positive mood. Next slide, Shona. How are you going to help colleagues or your team members move forward if you are not on the same page? So genuine rapport with your colleagues or direct reports will help you establish a strong foundation as it creates a level of trust and understanding. So building rapport gets their unconscious minds to accept and begin to process your suggestions. They are made to feel comfortable and relaxed, open to suggestions. What's also important is meeting someone where they are. And this means bridging the gap between your own expectations and where the other person is coming from. It means intentionally listening to understand their values, needs, desires, and even their trauma responses. So to meet them where they are is actually a skill everyone should learn. Empathetic engagement leaves a feeling of connectedness. And when you are talking or engaging with your people, you can say, tell me what's happening. I'm here to listen. I'm sorry you went through that. I know that you are overwhelmed, but you are not alone. What can I do to support you? Can we move to the next slide, Shona? This is about control, knowing that you are in charge. So at any given moment, you have the power of choice. What are you choosing? Pause in the moment when you're confronted with a task or situation. Make mental or written notes of what is within your control, saying to yourself, I absolutely can do this. Are there aspects of this situation that requires further input or support? Then park this for now. You can look for the solutions shortly. Let go of what is not within your control because time is of the essence and you cannot afford to waste time on what does not serve you because all it's going to do is tire you, frustrate you, and make you more fearful. So when you focus on what you can control, it gives you a sense of achievement. This changes feelings of helplessness or feeling overwhelmed and encourages you to find solutions with other aspects that need attention. So you are shifting yourself from feeling stuck, and you change the narrative for yourself. Next slide, Shona. We are paying far too much attention to social media. We really need to understand the bigger picture here. And then we're looking at the news at every opportunity. There's a sense of panic and anxiety that's building up within us as we try to sift through the information we are receiving. So limit your social media to what you know are the best sources. Don't try to be a part of every crime awareness WhatsApp group or apps like Zello. Choose ones that you feel most comfortable with and limit your check-ins. You don't have to be looking at your phone every 5 minutes, every half an hour. Make sure that you are giving yourself enough space to detox from that and check in when appropriate. And when you do receive this information and it raises discomfort within you, pause and unpack this. What does this information say to you? Most importantly, look at the facts before choosing a side. Are you leaving this person or our country better than you found it because of the side you are choosing to be on? Ask yourself, am I part of the solution moving us forward? You change the narrative for yourself and others. Next slide. I understand that in this environment, there are targets to achieve and projects to fulfill. For now, focus on the smaller steps that will help you and your team get comfortably back into flow. A focus on smaller steps helps us to get started, to recover and rebuild. If you think that you rather step up because there is so much to be done and it needs to be tackled head on, you might just trip yourself. And if that step is too big a step to take right now, that is going to lead to failure. So look at what you have before you right now and break it down into smaller, more achievable steps. They don't feel overwhelming, and then inertia takes over. And once we're in motion, it's easier to continue. So share this with your teams and help them to unpack their workload into smaller, more achievable steps. Next slide, Shona. You could be feeling anxious about various situations you are currently experiencing, whether it is your tasks on hand or addressing your people issues. You may be feeling a little tense or uncomfortable. Deep breathing is one of the best ways to lower stress in the body. This is because when you breathe deeply, it sends a message to your brain to calm down and relax. And how does this happen? So deep breathing increases the supply of oxygen to your brain. And this stimulates what we call the parasympathetic nervous system, which promotes a state of calmness. So when you are engaging with others, and if you feel that you are tense and anxious, just do some breathing exercises to calm down before you engage further. Above all, be patient with all things, but especially with yourself. Thank you for the opportunity to share, and I trust that you find this information helpful.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Roshni. And thank you for sharing that with us. There are some people in the chat who would like to be added to your WhatsApp groups. So you can just have a look at that and start adding them. I think it's fantastic, and it does sound really easy for us to flip our script. I think I'm going to try the deep breathing for today. Sticking to the leadership aspect, though, I'd like to ask Letabo to come in on this particular part of the discussion and answer a very relevant question. How do we as leaders support our teams? We aren't trained in this field, some of us at least, but what can we look out for? What are the signs of someone needing assistance? And with many of our staff in the sector working from home, how do we overcome this additional barrier? Letabo, if you can just come in and tell us a little bit about that.
Thank you so much, Shona, for that question. Very important question. So in the kind of work that we do, one of the issues that you find a lot of managers having, or the biggest question that managers have is, what exactly can I do to be able to support my team? What exactly can I do to be able to, provide that mental health support for the team, especially considering the unprecedented circumstances or situation that we find ourselves in? I think the important thing is that managers and just leaders in general within organizations need to understand the importance of what we call mental health first aid. Mental health first aid really is about being able as a manager to identify a colleague that is in distress. And by distress, it can manifest in different ways. For instance, you may find that, I always say that you hire someone for a reason. You hire a particular candidate because you found them fit for the job. You found that they were basically the best candidate for whatever position you've hired them for. Somewhere along the line, they begin to change. Somewhere along the line, the work quality deteriorates. Somewhere along the line, they begin to be a little bit more withdrawn from their teams, for instance. And instead of actually identifying that there could be a potential issue there, that as a manager, you can kind of probe and really understand what is happening with this individual, we tend to handle these kind of situations in a very punitive manner. So essentially what I'm trying to say is that the way in which we're approaching, I would say, even employee mental health right now is in a very punitive kind of way, in that we turn these situations then into, performance management issues. We turn them into, conduct issues, because certain mental health conditions result in certain kinds of conduct, that may manifest perhaps as aggression in the workplace, or maybe the employee is not necessarily getting well with other colleagues. So we tend to take that punitive approach. HR gets involved, but the important thing, as I'm saying, is to be able to identify when there are problems and there's behavioral changes in particular employees. And the only way to do that is if organizations invest in what we call mental health first aid training. In the absence of that, what managers can do is begin to educate themselves, read up a little bit about some of the most common mental health conditions. I know in South Africa, depression currently is the most prevalent mental health condition. Find out what depression looks like. How does it manifest itself in the workplace? Managers right now especially do need training in mental health literacy. Mental health literacy assists in terms of, helping you as a manager, as a team leader, to be able to identify, as I said, when someone is in distress, so that you are able to refer them to the relevant support services within the organization. Which leads me to my second point. As a manager, it's your responsibility, or as a leader, to understand what support services are in your organization when it comes to supporting mental health in your specific workplaces. I know there's employee assistance programs. I know we, for instance, in our line of work, we've had to engage with quite a few organizations, and we're seeing that the utilization rates for employee wellness programs or assistance programs, as they're also called, is quite low. So in the one company, for instance, a very well-known insurance company, with about 2,500 employees, only 4% of the employees were utilizing the employee assistance programs or the employee wellness programs. As a manager, understand what it is that drives utilization, how is it that you can help the organization to ensure that more and more employees make use of such programs, because after all, companies are, investing a lot of money in these wellness programs. Drive utilization, and the only way to do that is to open dialogue around mental health. So you can have something in place, but if your employees are not going to use it, you need to understand why is it that they're not using it. Maybe perhaps it's not fit for the organization, or the employees don't find it beneficial for them. So as a manager, as a leader, understand what are the services that are in place in the organization. Is it being utilized? Can it be improved? Do we need something different? So the other thing is that we find that as managers, as leaders in our organizations, we ourselves don't know what it is that our companies have in place to support staff. So if we don't know, how do we expect that, the staff and the teams that we're leading will have knowledge of these services? So understand what is being offered in your organization, share that with your teams, encourage the utilization of those kinds of services. The other important thing is, when I talk about opening dialogue around mental health and normalizing the conversation, part of normalizing the conversation as a manager is humanize it. Humanize it by sharing your own story. There's a study that was done by SADC that, some of the participants were asked whether they had shared previously their struggles with mental health with their managers, for instance. And 69% of the participants had said that when they did attempt to share or disclose their struggles with mental health, they found that their managers responded in a negative manner or indifferently. And I don't think it's because managers are indifferent or they don't care or they don't want to care. It's because they really don't know how to respond, how to give that support. So even if I do come to my manager and say, I'm dealing with depression, I've got an anxiety condition, most of the times managers don't really know what to do. So I think it's very important that in capacitating our leaders, our managers, in all different kinds of, leadership topics or subjects, mental health also needs to be prioritized as a leadership prerogative, if you will. We need to be able to ensure that our managers are well equipped and they are able to respond when an employee approaches them with struggles around mental health. The other thing is about leading with empathy. I think now more than ever, we need leaders who are not just about targets, who are not just about churning out the work, but are also about ensuring that, they take time. I like what the previous speaker said about checking in. We strongly advocate, in the work that we do for checking in. Check in with your team. Check in with your team every morning. Find out genuinely, how is it that everybody is doing? And ensure that you take those, the insights that you're getting from your teams to assist HR, to assist your well-being departments on really understanding how people are doing in the organization. What is it that can be done to be able to better the mental well-being of staff? So don't just ask and check in for the sake of it, but also check in with the vision to improve the situation in the workplace, to improve the mental health outcomes of your staff. And with COVID right now, I think when we talk about, looking out for signs of distress in colleagues and employees, COVID has made it particularly difficult because we are working remotely. So you can't really keep an eye on how someone is doing and their behavioral changes. But you are able to tell when someone is less engaged in meetings, for instance. Work quality, as I said, those kind of things you can easily be able to tell. Take the time to check in with individual team members, point out those behavioral changes that you've identified and be able to then direct them to relevant support. And relevant support, not just within the organization, as I mentioned previously, but we've got Lifeline, for instance, that's joining us in this panel discussion. The likes of Lifeline, the South African Depression Anxiety Group, various organizations that, deal with mental health issues, particularly as they pertain to the workplace. Make sure that as a manager, as a leader, you are also a resource hub for your teams. If ever they present with any challenges, you're able to refer them to relevant support services. The other thing that I want to point out is that, as much as we are, when we took the poll in the beginning of this webinar, one of the things that really stood out to me and that really made me think was everybody that's sitting here or in this webinar, I'd like to believe we are, kind of leaders in our organizations and leading teams, etc. If we are feeling the way we are feeling, how are our teams feeling? Those kind of feelings of feeling overwhelmed, feeling a bit despondent about the future. If we are feeling like that when we are meant to lead people, imagine how it is that also our team that we are leading are feeling themselves. So it's also very important to be mindful and be cognizant of the fact that if we're feeling the way we are feeling, there's definitely something going on in the office. Our teams are not well, and we need to be able to take the necessary steps to assist. So for me, really, it's about mental health literacy in the workplace. There is no way around that. And I feel like someone has said that mental health is in the workplace is the new pandemic. There's no running away from mental health in our workplaces. Managers, leaders need to be educated on the subject. They need to be trained on mental health first aid, for instance, so that we can be able to prevent and intervene early to assist our teams, to ensure that they don't spend prolonged periods away from work. 3 weeks in a psychiatric clinic, for instance, to be treated for something that a manager could have easily identified earlier on, intervened, provided the necessary help, and ensured that the person was, integrated back into the workplace, and there was no interruption, in productivity. So I think really for me, that's the sort of practical tips I would give. Check in. Mental health literacy training for your managers, very important. If there isn't such a structure in your organization, I think it is up to the leaders and managers to ensure that those sort of structures and those training and all of those things are done, especially right now in the time that we're in. So that is my input on that. Thank you so much, Shona.
Awesome. Letabu, thank you so much. You make it sound so easy, and I wish I had you as a resource when I was still managing teams in the workplace. To the attendees, I hope you're getting all of this in. And based on what Letabu said, I just want to change track slightly. I want to put out 2 additional polls before I move into my next question, because it is very pertinent. And Letabu alluded to it. So on a scale of 1 to 10, or on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being the most important, what importance is currently being placed on prioritizing mental health in your workplace? And the second question is, again, on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being the most important. In your opinion, how important is the focus and involvement on kids' mental wellness in business, in society, and in our schools? Because we're parents, right? We're not just leaders, we're not just managers, we're not just employees. Our employees are not just employees. They are parents. They have the same struggles, like I alluded to in the beginning, with regard to having to teach their kids from home on the days that they're not at school. During the lockdown last year, a lot of them were trying to work and make sure that their kids got some level of education during that period. And it's been difficult on all of us. So this is a really important question, and just looking at some of the responses that are coming through, we can see that the priority on mental health, or what importance is currently placed, is not really that high. We've got some 4s coming through, but we've also got an equal amount of 2s and 3s that are coming through in terms of the importance of mental health in the workplace. So to Letabu's earlier points, I think we've got to make sure that we are driving utilization of PAP programs, and that we are engaging our staff on all levels, because that helps us put the focus onto mental health. And then, interesting for you, Candace, you'll see that through the poll, a lot of our attendees are saying that the focus on mental health is very important for kids in business, in society, and in schools. So we'll leave that to run. But because we're not just leaders and managers, We're parents and we get affected by the well-being of our kids too. We're also managing and leading the parents who have real concerns around their family's well-being, physically, mentally. So Candace, can you help us understand how do we help our kids and our parent employees to navigate this tumultuous time that we find ourselves in? What pearls of wisdom can you give us to make our lives as parents a little bit better and to genuinely just be there for our kids?
Cool. Thank you so much, Shona. So I think, Latabo and Rashni, you've given some really valuable advice. I think what I take away from Rashni is just the ladder with the different steps. It's not one big step that we need to take every day. It's those small little steps that count. And so we just need to be graceful with ourselves in terms of how we, go about our mental health and improving our lives. And so, yeah, so tumultuous indeed. The lines are definitely blurred in terms of business and family. And we find that even the business leaders on the call right now, they would obviously be parents, they would be caregivers, but as well as managers, CEOs, or even a single parent at that, for that matter. So when it comes to mental health, we've got two very critical or important sort of concepts that we look to. So the one is the mental health measuring scale, where we have a scale from 0 to 10. And if you can just imagine in your mind from a scale 0 and then all the numbers up to 10. And where the numbers 0 to 4 is about sort of the preventative measures stance, or the preventative space that a family is in. And then going up to, say, from 6 to 10, that's more of like the crisis management. That's where we are anxious, we are depressed, we are managing trauma as a family. So using that scale, every family would be different. So my 1 would not be the same as someone else's 1. My 2 won't be the same as someone else's 2, similarly the same as 9s or 10s. So at Kids Dialogue, we have a very critical sort of concept, and it's called the connected family. So this connected family, or this concept, we're always striving to be that. So when we are connected, we are flourishing, we are full of joy, we are learning, we are growing. But when we are not, it's sort of the foundations are then kind of affected. So the more intentional we are, and the more time we try and spend on the preventative space, and I will give you some tools now, we are then empowering ourselves and creating a buffer for the issues to come. So let me give you 3 points in terms of the aims of the connected family before we go into the how we actually do it. So the first thing, so the three things are the understanding your family's emotional and mental state. And obviously on the rating scales, you would then look at past experiences and how and what a 1 means for your family, what a 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. The second one is putting certain practices and routines in place, which helps impact your environment. So your connected self, yourself connected as part of your work team, and then your connected family sort of self. And the third one is establishing psychological safety. And all this done through love and play. Yes, it does sound a little bit fun and airy-fairy, but really it does speak to how the brain works and where we are in terms of our preventative space and how we can cope. How this is done is, first of all, creating a structure and healthy boundaries. So when parents are in creating healthy boundaries, they are feeling safe and confident, able to manage the family, but similarly, kids thrive under structure. Okay. The second one is spending unstructured, unhurried, and going into listening mode time. So, and I'm not saying 5 hours, I'm not saying 10 hours, I'm not even saying an hour. This would be unique to each family. So if you're saying you've only got 5 minutes a day where I can do this, that's perfect. Work within those 5 minutes. I'm saying 5 to 20 minutes, stretch your limits a little bit, but look at the 5 to 20 minutes and where you can fit those minutes in. And then the last one is love and play. We all know that our brain is the center of our body and how we perceive emotions. So our amygdala is very critical in regulating emotions, but also understanding how we can use love, play, freedom, joy, laughter to create those buffers for issues and turmoil that may or may not come. When kids are full of love, full of joy, they are more in their freedom mode. You can then learn, they can absorb the environment, they can learn, they are speaking their truths, you are able to unpack certain things about how their day went. It's really an important time for them. My recommendation is to put this time in your diary. So if you're saying, okay, I've only got 10 minutes and it's from 6 until 10 past 6, great, let's start there, okay? Through this routine and structure that I've described, it creates opportunities to empower kids emotionally. So on Kids Dialogue, we have on our website, we've got a library section. And in the library section, there's various age group categories, and each one talks about emotions. So it's about either being angry or sad or grumpy or happy or joyful, but it allows them to associate their emotions through storytelling. Because remember, kids are really inspired, and so are we as adults, inspired by stories and listening and engaging with how someone else is maybe experiencing something. There are 3 points here as well. So the first one is giving the emotions a name, instead of taking that name and associating with your child. So instead of saying, you are a nervous ball at the moment, aren't you? You would rather say, are you feeling nervous? So preserving their identity from a positive perspective, but allowing that nervous label to float around, not to be associated with them. They are then establishing their authority, and they're able to manage their emotions better in that situation. Words are powerful. So just under there, please remember that words are powerful. Let's be positive in that sense. The second one is creating a safe space. As I've said, if you've only got those 5 minutes of unstructured, unhurried play, then do the 5 minutes. But creating a safe space is basically allowing your child to feel whatever they're going to feel, and you responding and supporting them through that process. See, as parents, we really don't want our kids to be feeling, anxious and depressed and sad and all of those sort of things. But if we really want to be raising the next generation of resilient and compassionate leaders, we need to be empowering them to manage their emotions first before they're going to be managing anything else after that. From the emotion stems managing their time, managing their life, managing their finances, all of those sort of things. So everything stems from a mental health perspective when it comes to kids. And then lastly, words that affirm positively. So our bedtime routine is basically, I'm available, sometimes I'm not, but I try to be from about 6 until 7 o'clock at night. So 6 is basically bath time, then we go into gentle play, then we pray together as a family. My husband will come, we'll pray together, he'll go back to work, and then it'll be story time, words of affirmation, and then sleep time. We have about 10 to 15 minutes where we're playing, we're laughing, we're joking, we're really just unstructured and unhurried. But we need to be affirming. So when it comes to words of affirmations, it's things like, I am enough, I'm happy, I'm kind, I'm joyful, I'm healthy. It's like Rashni also said, having those affirming words spoken over you or to you or with you is really actually exciting, whether you have a Spider-Man suit on or whether you don't, or, so it really, even you can even try that tonight if you're not already doing it. Try and speak to your kids, and they will then respond in a very positive manner. And then I've got 3 last things. Sorry, I know I'm running out of time. Let's teach our kids how to manage their world with differences. So don't only teach kids with special needs how to manage other kids, and then also this transcends diagnosis. So if you've got a kid with ADHD, autism, anxiety, and depression, use the plan. And lastly, be graceful. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Candace. And it really is a great resource because kids are very expressive. And often when we're sitting on Zoom calls and having to do things, we're very dismissive of them when they want to tell us something. So I think we could do better to express ourselves in a way that kids do. especially when we're faced with an avalanche of emotions. Now, we know that there's a difference between mental health and emotional health, and that if you manage your emotional well-being really well, you can then manage your mental health. And knowing how to deal with this makes us less likely to experience any mental health issues. And it starts, as you said, with managing the mental health, even in our kids. So I want to cross over to Henrietta. Henrietta, you see the impact of unmanaged emotions through your work at Lifeline South Africa. Can you share with us some of the statistics of what comes through to Lifeline, and perhaps just share some insights with us on managing emotions and ourselves and our employees just during this time?
Thank you very much, Shona, for posting that question to me. I think as I begin, it's very important for us to understand that emotions play a very big part of our lives. Therefore, we cannot ignore them. And that on its own shows us that it's very important for us to be able to learn how to manage them. And yes, on a daily basis, we go through various emotions. Some are on their highs and some are on their lows. Some are easy to manage and some are quite challenging and overwhelming. However, it is very normal for any individual to struggle in dealing with their emotions. And in that being said, it is our duty to make sure that whenever we are struggling to deal with them, we seek professional help so that we avoid ourselves from experiencing various mental health problems that we might incur. Emotional dysregulation is thought to be a big part of mental health problems, such as anxiety, depression, various personality disorders, your bipolar, psychosis, and PTSD. But the good news today is we have organizations like Lifeline who are here to assist you, to tap into your space, to hold your hand, to facilitate supportive programs that can assist you to build resilience and learn to manage your emotions in healthy ways in various stages of your life. The total calls that we have reached thus far from January to July have already been said in the introduction. As an organization, we've reached more than 190,000 calls for the past month. And this being said, meaning that as we break down these calls in a day, we receive over 1,000 calls. And these calls, they vary in nature because people are going through different things in their spaces. Communities are dynamic and people are facing different struggles depending on the communities that they're existing from. So the nature of our calls range from people who are going through anxiety because of the current situation that is happening, issues of COVID pandemic, and the social unrest that just happened. Some are even scared that they're going to lose their jobs because the small and medium businesses have been affected so much, including the retail space. And then we've got people who are going through panic. I'm sure you'd agree with me that there is a lot of news that is going on in our social media spaces. And some of the news also has got so much vivid material that people are being exposed to. So people are in a disarray of emotions. They do not know what is true. They do not know what is fake. And because of that, their emotions are overwhelming their personal spaces and they're in a state of panic. And then we are having people who are going through grief because they have lost their loved ones. Some have lost them through the COVID pandemic, and some have lost them through the current social unrest that happened in our country. And then it is also paramount to understand that, especially with the social unrest that recently took place, a lot of painful past experiences were triggered in people's minds, and people found themselves in a space where they had to relive those experiences that they went through, and they are dealing with so much post-traumatic stress that is happening in them. So these are some of the calls that the organization is dealing with, because people are so uncertain about their present life. People are so fearful of what the next day will hold, and some are even kids are the most affected. Now that schools have opened, we find that there are some children who are even skeptical of going back to school because they do not know what tomorrow will hold for them. However, for our takeaway points, it is important for every worker in the organization, this includes both the employee and the employer, to understand that any worker who is not emotionally well is in danger to herself or himself and those around him or her. So by this being said, I want us to understand that the focus, therefore, that will be mandated on our personal spaces is to be able to build capacity, to be able to calm our own minds after a negative experience, such as the social unrest, such as the COVID pandemic has happened in our personal spaces. And a lot has happened in people's lives. Some are even threatened in their own relationships because people are going through retrenchment. Some are losing their jobs, and the financial issues that are happening in families are causing even some families to go through divorce. So it is very, very important for one to be able to build that capacity to deal with such negative emotions that can happen because of what is happening around them. And if not so, then the company is mandated to make sure that there are employment wellness programs that are running through so that it supports such individuals who are going through distress. And then it's very important to be able to manage negative emotions and impulses. With us in the working profession, we are not immune to what is happening around, because before we are social workers, we are mothers, we are fathers, we are individuals in our societies who have got responsibilities. So we are equally affected by what is going on around us. Therefore, we have to be mindful that we are serving a community that is angry, we're serving a community that is distressed, we're serving a community that is traumatized, and it's very, very important for us to be able to manage those negative emotions and impulses that people are going through and be able to create a safety net for them and to be able to create better coping mechanisms that they cannot develop on themselves. Then the other point to take away is, as professionals, it's very important for us to keep a positive look. With this being said, our duty is to make our clients feel important. Therefore, if there are issues that are eating us away as professionals, it becomes very difficult for us to achieve the very goals that we want our clients or our customers to experience. Therefore, it is very important for us to make sure that we always keep that positive outlook and deal with whatever issues might try to trigger negative emotions in us or might try to disrupt our daily functioning in being effective service providers. And this has been also said by the previous speakers as well. That is very important to take notice of what others may be feeling. Remember, I said no one is immune to this one. Therefore, we must shift our focus and not only concentrate on ourselves and think we're the only ones who are going through this, because having that in mind, thinking that you're the only person who's going through this, through whatever issue that you can be going through, will make it difficult for you to be able to deal with it. You will feel hopeless, you will feel that this is the end of the road, but knowing that there's another person who might be going through a similar or a different challenge makes it easy for you to understand that you're not alone. But also to dissociate from selfish motives and to be able to offer an active listening ear, to be able to exercise empathy, to be able to acknowledge feelings of another person and try and identify some of the cues that might assist them in going through their personal struggles as well. And then we have to be service-oriented, because this is our calling in essence, for us to be able to facilitate an effective service delivery to the clients that we are serving. Therefore, let us always be mindful of our vision and of our mission of the different organizations that we're existing from. These are some of the benefits that will serve both the employees and the company's best interest. As employees and employers are emotionally well, it means that there is personal productivity and development that will be fostered. To us, it means that we are preventing reactive outbursts that might happen. Remember, I said, as I was introducing, that days are not the same. Sometimes, we're experiencing our highs, sometimes we're experiencing our lows. So there are days where we find ourselves in spaces where our emotions are so overwhelming. But if there is someone within the organization, maybe if there is a social work unit that is there to assist the employers to be able to debrief them and to be able to help them to deal with their issues, then the company is also benefiting from a staff turnover, from reactive outbursts, even from unnecessary expenditure that it might end up using if the staff is not emotionally well. Then we've got issues of effective interpersonal communication. It's very important for us to be able to know how to communicate to ourselves first before we can be able to communicate with the next person. The previous speaker also emphasized on the importance of being kind. Therefore, it's one of the issues that are very, very paramount when it comes to interpersonal communication, to be able to communicate with respect, with kindness, with understanding, and to be able to put another person first before us. Then the company will also benefit with a better teamwork. A lot of companies are spending so much finances in trying to take their employees out for teamwork experiences, just to make sure that they foster that teamwork and for employees to be to experience work satisfaction. However, it must not be the only basis that is there for employees to be emotionally well. If there is a running organizational culture that has got an EAP program running through, then you realize that some of those things can be eliminated because teamwork will be part of the culture of the organization. Then it's very important for employees to make thoughtful decisions as well. If our emotions are overwhelming us, it means that our decision-making is equally affected, and we might struggle to make proper decisions that have the best interest of the organization and the clientele service that we are attending to. But if we are emotionally well, we are able to work in an environment that will foster us to make thoughtful decisions and be able to remind ourselves to be mindful of what is happening around us and to remind ourselves of the greater goal. Then issues of self-motivation also come into play as well. If we are self-motivated because our emotions are taken care of and are managed, then it becomes easier for you as a manager or as a boss to deal with the team that will be able to deliver within a short period of time and to be able to deliver effective work because they are individually self-motivated without being pushed. And then for our practical pointers as I go through to the end, it's very important to identify what you are feeling at a specific time. Remember, we agreed that days are not the same. Sometimes you're feeling excited, sometimes you're feeling down. So it's very important to understand what is it that you're feeling today and at these apparent times. And remember, feelings fluctuate, your emotions fluctuate. You might feel excited now, but once down the line, we're feeling otherwise. Therefore, identify each and every emotion that you're going through, depending on the experience or in an event that you're going through. And then accept your emotions, not part of them, but all of them, because they are all important and none of them must be left unattended to. know when to express yourself. Sometimes we're dealing with clients who are impossible, and if we can allow our emotions to overcrowd us or to overwhelm us, we'll find ourselves lashing back at them. And then the aim is for us to be able to regulate our emotions and never to repress them, because those that are left undealt with are those that will affect us at a later stage. And then lastly, it's very, very important for one to exercise the stop, the drop, and the process approach. Try and, as difficult as it might be, to try and stop and think when you're angry, when you're frustrated, when you're fuming. Keeping it, practicing it will yield results. Whenever you're feeling overwhelmed, stop and think, is it the right moment? Is it the right time for me to exercise my outbursts? Or you can shift them at a later stage. Drop whatever intense emotions are overwhelming you so that you're at a better space to make thoughtful decisions, and process each and every emotion that you're going through so that you leave nothing, no emotion undealt with. Then it will make us to be better employees at a better space, working in a better environment for the clients that we are serving. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Henrietta. Such a wealth of insights that you've given us. And thank you again to you and the team at Lifeline South Africa for the work that you put in. Our last question, I want to tap into some of Dr. Mariette's insights. I'm aware that the last 16 months also has a psychosocial impact on transformation and possibly diversity in terms of how we interact and engage with each other when we ourselves are not 100%. So, Mariette, can you tell us how to win together? How do we move forward with our diverse cultures and backgrounds and win this mental fight together?
Thank you so much. And indeed, I'm also going to link to some of the other speakers and maybe just build a little bit on it. So just let's talk leaders first and foremost. So it's okay that you as a leader don't have all the answers. Harness the power of diversity, the different opinions, perspectives, skill sets, and really build on that, because ultimately that can lead to better solutions, better perspectives, clearer view of things, and also to remember that you don't need to control everything. You don't need to be certain about everything. You don't need to know about everything. As Roshini has also said, control what you can. And also understand that it's about not control per se of people, but really about collective thinking and relationships, to put people first, because what we focus on or what we give attention to grows. So it's important that we focus on people, and when we see something is not right, to stop and say, are you okay? When we see their performance is not up to standard, to focus first on whether they are okay before we now start and barge in and address a non-performance issue. It's also, if you're a leader, about convening. Now, people are hungry for forums and platforms in the workplace where they can really be themselves, where they can express, and where it's safe for them. But it often starts with you as well, to be okay, to be vulnerable. It is really a vulnerable world we're living in. It's uncertain, it's complex, and it's ambiguous. That's where the VUCA comes in. So connect with human beings first. Give them an opportunity to talk. Make an effort from your side as well to really listen, and to listen to understand and not to respond. There's quite a difference. Listen with full attention. So often people come into our offices and we look at the computer screen and we give the impression we're listening, but we're not really. We're still focusing. So get out from behind your desk, go sit next to the person, look them in the eye. Someone spoke about, when do we see if people are engaged or not? Look in their eyes. If their eyes are shining, they are engaged and with you. Also, create an environment that validates feelings so that it can support more rigorous and liberated thinking. Also, earlier, it was referred to that we must take small steps. So every small little change where you're harnessing the diversity takes you a step forward. Ultimately, we make change happen and we move forward one conversation, one room, one group at a time. And we also, if it's a small group, convene your small groups, because then everyone can really be heard. And people are just wanting to be seen, to be heard, and to be valued. So very important as well that we really have a better ratio between appreciation and criticism in these days. People are sensitive, maybe a lot more sensitive than before. So you really need a ratio of about 5-to-1 appreciation versus criticism. Also, important to move from problems to possibility, to understand that often we are so overwhelmed and so caught up in all the problems, but to see if we can see the possibilities in situations. And we really do that by a few steps. To first and foremost list our challenges, to reframe them as possibilities, to ask what if questions. What if we changed the paradigm? What if we changed our stories? To vision a different environment, future, company, to choose then where to begin and to then create small steps of action. Candace also spoke about stories. We often have what I call single stories. It's really stories that has a one side, a one dimension, and that really becomes our truths. That becomes our reality, and that drives our behavior often. So important that we challenge those, get all sides of the stories, and together as a diverse environment, create new stories. Obviously, also important that we have clear communication, and then also that we have regular check-ins that was referred to earlier, to do empathy walks with your staff. It's really a process where we walk next to one another, we share stories, and we really understand where we come from, where we are at, and where we are going to. And just beautiful listening without interrupting, and just understanding and connecting as human beings. Also, as a leader, to reflect regularly, to go into maybe some reflective writing so that you can make sense of and see the purpose of things that is in front of you. Also, to invite the voices of dissent, to allow people to say no when they want to say no, and not to be perturbed by it or feel offended. And to understand that, Peter Block says, if you can't say no, then your yes means nothing. So quite important that we invite the voices of dissent and understand why people feel the way they feel. Also important, and this is a little bit closer to home, is to understand if people are not behaving the way that we want them to question and ask ourselves, are we enrolling them in the right way? Have we given them what they need to really come on board and to walk the path with us? And also to understand really not just the presenting problem, but the real problem, what's behind and underneath the water. And to understand what is others' contribution potentially to that, but also my own contribution as a leader. How am I showing up as a leader that maybe contributes to the difficult?
Is it just me, or did everybody lose Dr. Mariette?
Yeah, I've
Yeah, I
also
think
lost.
We have
all
lost her.
Yeah.
Okay. Apologies, guys. It seems like Dr. Mariette's lost a little bit of her signal.
Shona, I think that because we're nearing the end, perhaps we want to throw the question open to our panelists that are still on, and then pass over to Samkelo.
100%. So Trace, I'll actually pass over to Samkelo right now, and he'll jump in with the question, and he'll open it up to all of our panelists that has come through. To everybody else, thank you. Samkelo, over to you.
Excellent. Thank you and good afternoon, everyone. The question that we have, and anyone in the panel can answer, it's quite an interesting question. What are the recommendations for addressing managers that make use of the mental health services, whether it's iCares, obviously mentioned it as an example within the company as means of prejudicing people from opportunities driven by their own held stigma and beliefs on mental health. So a manager goes and uses either the data in there against employees or makes use of the service to stigmatize those who make use of it. Is there any member in the panel who would like to give a step on this one? You are on mute.
Letabo, you can unmute and answer the question.
Thank you so much for that question. I believe it is Jody that has asked that question. That is, I spoke earlier about how organizations need to drive utilization of EAPs such as iCares, Samkelo, just to the example that you've used. One of the main issues that employees have communicated is precisely that they don't utilize the services because there is an issue of confidentiality there. They believe that the organization has some sort of relationship with the mental health or with the service provider. So the challenge there really is for the organization itself to be able to put mechanisms in place that would ensure that that level of confidentiality is maintained. If you have identified, Jody, I believe, that, for instance, there is a manager that would have prejudiced, a deserving employee of a promotion, for instance, and you believe that it is precisely because of their mental health issues, that is something that I believe, needs to be seriously. You need to report that, because firstly, it's illegal. If we're going to look at, issues of diversity, inclusion from a mental health perspective, you cannot prejudice someone, from getting promotions or etc. because of a mental health condition. So I would say that needs to be, the organization would clearly need to set an example to reinforce confidentiality. And by setting an example, I mean, report those kind of issues, make sure that the manager involved or concerned is dealt with decisively to ensure that, you begin to cultivate that culture of openness around mental health. So you don't have situations where people are afraid to come forward because they fear that they will be prejudiced. So the only advice really is for those kind of issues to reach HR so that they're dealt with to avoid, to avoid situations where your organization seems to not be open to mental health or is punishing people for coming forward with their mental health issues.
Excellent. Yeah, excellent. Thanks, Letabo. Mariette, I see that you are back, but we are cut off on time. Apologies that the fiber seemed to have disappeared. I'm not saying it was a Celsi fiber, but you just seem to have lost you over there. Do you want to say a one sentence, maybe just to close, because we're about to wrap? I don't want to be unfair to you because we just lost you and you were saying very critical, important things. Just maybe 1 minute before we close. Sorry about that, Mariette. You're on mute. Yeah.
Yes, 100%. Thank you. Yeah, so really to be curious, to refrain from judgment, in a diverse environment, to allow people to be seen, heard, and valued, and ultimately to have an open heart, open mind, and open will for the diversity and the environment and people's feelings, and to ultimately focus on people first before the other elements. And I think that's about it. And lastly, to give people an A. And that simply means by, allowing them and believing the best possible scenario instead of focusing on the negative. Thank you so much.
Bye, Danke, Mariette. And I'm sure Tracy and Shauna are giving all our panelists and the attendees to this session also an A as well. It was a very good session. Thank you very much, everyone. And we hope that the skill and the insight that was shared here, you'll be able to make use of it in your workplace. The contact details are there, and you can reach out to people on LinkedIn as well, the members of the panelists, if you want to make use of their services. Thank you very much, everyone. We've got about 1 minute remaining. This was a very good session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Samkelo. And thank you to everybody for being here. Thank you to our panelists for your expert advice, and to our attendees for joining us. We hope that this is the start of many more such conversations that we have with our sector, and we look forward to welcoming every single one of our panelists back. We are on time, so I would like to thank you. Have a really awesome week further and enjoy the rest of your day. Cheers, everybody.
Thank you.